I'm Norm Poltenson, the publisher of the Business Journal, and I'd like to share a thought with you this morning, which I call Color My Pork Purple. Well, they're always busy in Washington. They're busy with a variety of scandals and, of course, the immigration bill. But the bill that's getting most of the attention in Congress on a working basis is what we call the Farm Bill. And you have to remember the Farm Bill, the last time we authorized a Farm Bill was in 2008. We seem to do it every 5 years. And the bill last time was calculated by the Congressional Budget Office as costing a little over $600 billion. Well, there's a lot of hype going on in Washington from my fellow journalists talking about the battle between the Republicans and the Democrats. But let me tell you what the battle is. Basically, the cost of the Farm Bill is going up 60%. So the only difference is whether it goes up now from $604 billion to $950 billion as authorized for the next 5 years, or whether it's $963 billion. So basically what we're talking about is a little over 1% on the margin, and that's the battle that's going on. Let's take a step back and talk about the Farm Bill and what kind of image do you have of a Farm Bill? Who's supposed to be helped by it? And the original Farm Bill, remember, is 80 years old. It was cast in 1933 during the middle of the Depression. In fact, in the depths of the Depression when we were suffering from the Dust Bowl in the Midwest. The object was to help small farmers by raising their income and by giving them crop insurance. Okay, so who are the recipients 80 years later? Well, let's see. There's former President Jimmy Carter, who from 1995 to 2012 took in a nifty $272,000. Tom Vilsack, who sits as the Secretary of Agriculture, took in almost $83,000. His undersecretary took in more than $1 million as part of this Farm Bill. Oh, those poor fellows, the Rockefellers, Mark and David Rockefeller, they got about $947,000. Frank Lucas and Charles Grassley, who happen to sit on the agricultural committees that write the legislation, have taken in $1 million between them. And then there's this little company called Riceland Foods, does $1.5 billion a year in sales. In this period from 95 to 2012, they have taken in $554 million. How about those people in Manhattan? A lot of farmers in Manhattan, right? Well, they've taken in $9 million. And what about the Nature Conservancy? They've taken in almost $5 billion during this period. So we call it a Farm Bill, but actually, who's benefiting from it? Is it the small farmer? No, most of the money goes to large farmers. The biggest recipient by far are those people on food stamps. And of course, that's how we get legislation done. What you do is you get as many entities as possible to come together. They all have a vested interest, so they all vote for it. So we have a large group of people who are supporting nutritional programs. They take 80% of what is almost $1 trillion forecast over the next 10 years if this food bill passes. There are forestry projects. There are technology projects for the communications industry, basically called Let's Expand the Broadband. And of course, I've mentioned the environmentalist, and there are a lot of other rural development projects. Can we step back after 80 years and ask the basic questions? Do the farmers still need a, quote, farm bill? With all the technology we've developed in how to grow crops that are drought resistant and insect resistant, we have an option in the private sector for futures contracts. Farmers know about crop diversification. We have private insurance options. We have credit reserves. And if you look at farm community today, they are forecast for net income of $128 billion, the best they've done in 40 years. Is anybody in Washington asking the question, do farmers still need a, quote, farm bill? Well, obviously, nobody's asking the question, especially with the perverse results that you get. Instead of helping small farmers, we help rich farmers. And with all of the nutritional programs that we have, the group which receives the food stamp programs, the biggest health problem they have is obesity. So now we're going to give them 60% more so they can become fatter. And who picks up the health care bills? Why, those lucky taxpayers do, of course. This whole program is underwritten by tax subsidies and by you, the consumer, who gets to pay higher prices for the food. Only in America. Such a deal. So besides the farmers who are rich and the poor who are getting fatter, we have the environmentalists who are going against their own mission, because what they do is encourage rich farmers to buy marginal farmland. They drive up the price of the farmland. Poor farmers are squeezed out of it, or they have to go into a niche market. And when the rich farmers use these marginal farmlands, they tend to use more chemicals and they produce less per acre. And then, of course, who benefits from it? Our legislators, the very people who write the legislation. Now, if we were in the private sector, that would be considered a conflict of interest. You'd probably be in jail, but not our legislators. So if you're listening to my fellow journalists talk about all the reform that they have packed into this new farm bill, smile, take a deep breath, and just realize that there's no reform going on. All we're doing is spending more on a bill. We may be changing it marginally and at the edges, and every time we take something away, we add something that costs more. So my suggestion to you is next time you go to the store and you decide to buy some pork, don't be surprised if it's colored purple, because that's what happens when red and blue are mixed together. When you have Democrats and Republicans both agreeing on the same thing, red and blue yield purple. So I don't want you to be too upset when your pork turns out to be purple. This is Norm Poultonson. Thanks for listening.